On the edge of England, there is a place that is part of all our lives. A place where past, present and future come together. A place where time and tide transport people and produce around the world. Keeping our shelves stacked, our wheels turning, building our future. This place has always been a refuge from the stormy North Sea. Today, it's a major trading gateway in the choppy waters of our global economy, employing thousands and serving millions. 3 miles wide with 700 acres of anchorage, a harbour that's available at any tide and in any weather. This place is the Harwich Haven. The estuaries of the River Stour and the River Orwell form the only natural deep-water harbour between the Thames and the Humber. Centuries ago, it was said that when you cannot make Harwich, there is nothing but death before you. But in the early 1800s, this natural haven and 1,000 years of military and mercantile prowess was almost wrecked when it was discovered that the local stone could be used in the building trade. David Whittle of the Harwich Society knows this history well.
Septaria is a rock that's found in Harwich Harbour and it makes Roman cement. At the time 1832 came, there were actually 5 cement factories in this town. It employed 450 people. They were mining the cliffs, they were out in boats, trawling it up, and at the end of the day they were coming in and selling this rock to the cement factories.
But plundering these riches on either side of the harbour changed the water currents. The East Anglian coast is constantly being eroded by the sea. Sand and shingle is washed from north to south. The shape of Landguard Point and the power of the harbour currents worked together to stop this material from blocking the entrance to Harwich Harbour. But the quarrying of cement stone interfered with all this. The currents could no longer keep the entrance clear. The water got shallower, the entrance narrower. Landguard Point got longer. Harwich Harbour was silting up. It was a naval survey in the 1840s that highlighted the problem. Quarrying for cement stone was banned and dredging to secure access began. But more was needed to protect the harbour's future. A parliamentary select committee was set up, and it heard evidence that there were too many diverse interests, no overall authority, and with no likelihood of those local interests coming together for the common good to manage what was described as one of the finest harbours in the country. And so, in 1863, by Act of Parliament, the Harwich Haven Conservancy Board was created to secure, maintain and improve access to the Harwich Haven. We know it as the Harwich Haven Authority. Today, the Harwich Haven Authority ensures that one of Britain's most important transport arteries remains accessible to all shipping by a programme of dredging which costs millions. With huge ships now in service that can carry a cargo that would fill a 110-kilometre-long train, the Haven Authority works continually to maintain and improve access for shipping.
It's always important to know what depth of water you have, both for smaller boats but also for the big commercial vessels. We always need to know how much water there is and therefore what dredging is required to be done.
But you need more than a deep harbour to attract business. Harwich can draw on teams of experienced people to keep the port working efficiently and safely. People like the band of navigators who guide the different types of vessels safely to their berths. The Harwich Haven Authority pilots know these waters like the back of their hand.
The reason the ship takes a pilot is because of the intimate knowledge that the pilots have of the local waters, wind directions and different things, in communication with the tugs.
When the captain comes up, I will discuss with him the arrangements we're going to use to make the tugs fast, how we're going to manoeuvre the ship to get it off the quay, advise him of other ship movements and basically discuss the passage plan. This is a pretty standard ship, we go on this class quite often. When we board a ship we're handed a pilot card which has the manoeuvring characteristics. The card also tells us the bow thrust power, the manoeuvring speeds of the engine. So the tide is flowing into the harbour. We're starboard side 2. Tugs will be centre leads 4 and aft. Tugs lines.
We have a safety management system that's governed by the Port Marine Safety Code. The pilots train regularly with tug skippers, integrated operation training, and they take a long time to do that. They take between 5 and 7 years to reach this level.
To ensure the safety of crews and cargoes, the Harwich Haven Authority has invested in a computerised simulation of the harbour at Wallingford in Oxfordshire. It's here that pilots can practice and develop their skills without risking ships or seafarers. Back in the real world, a team of skilled technicians like Stephen Howard work long hours to keep the pilot boats afloat.
Yeah, we're all a multi-skilled bunch of lads really. There's many different tasks that are involved as part of the maintenance procedures on these boats. The importance of preventive maintenance is basically we can catch larger problems before they occur. But the job satisfaction comes from once you've rebuilt it, we get to test run it, and it's a satisfying feeling basically with the old beast thumping away on the test bed and being able to stand back and sort of say to yourself, I did that, you know.
Less technical, but just as important, is the network of marker buoys, like lanes on a motorway, that keep mariners safe.
This is part of just a annual routine of cleaning the buoys, checking all the moorings, and it'll all be done yearly for wear and tear. Tide coming in and out, they get wear and tear on the chain. These little buoys all mark the edge of the deep water navigation channel because we have dredgers come in periodically to dredge the channels, so it's safe for all the big ships to come in and out. If you come to the west of the red buoys here, it's also shallow, very, very shallow. I mean, and even the yachts here will run aground.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The shipping lanes off the Harwich Haven are some of the busiest on the planet, and they have to run like clockwork. From the humble dinghy to the biggest container ship, traffic management is the responsibility of a small, dedicated team high up in the harbour control room. Chris Bostock is an experienced mariner who has moved from ship to shore.
Graham will be monitoring the progress, not only visually but primarily on the radar screen, monitoring its progress, ensuring that it maintains passage through the harbour safely, and then he'll watch its approach as it manoeuvres towards its berth, and importantly also we'll be listening to the communications between the pilot on board and the tug which will be assisting it. He's got radar screens available to him, and he has a number of radar sites. Should we have a failure, then we always have another site to switch over, so we'll always have full coverage.
Relied on around the world, radar was developed just up the coast at Bordsea, and flying boat aircraft based at Felixstowe were used in its development. Half boat, half aircraft, these were a familiar sight in Harwich Harbour for over 40 years. Today, this history has been swallowed up by what is now one of the world's most successful container ports. Peter Barton has watched it grow.
We're now travelling down the Crossdock Road, which I travelled down in 1977 to start work in the dock basin. It was a very labour-intensified place to work because we were actually lowered down into the holds of the ship to handball cargo out. It could be bags of coffee beans, bags of cocoa beans, and all sorts of general cargo that came into the port at that time into the dock basin. And on my right is where the dock basin used to be.
You can still get a feel for the way that ships used to be unloaded by travelling up the estuary of the River Stour, through a timeless landscape to the port of Mistley, which also operates under the jurisdiction of the Harwich Haven Authority. This is Constable country, and during the great painter's life, this place would have been busy shipping East Anglian produce to London. Downstream, Harwich was a bustling international port centuries earlier. As early as 1661, an agreement was reached with the Dutch for a regular postal or packet service to cross the North Sea. 200 years later, the railway arrived, giving Harwich a fast connection to London. This was the making of the harbour, and the phrase "Harwich for the continent" was born. For a good part of the 20th century, you could leave London and cross to Europe by train ferry from Harwich. By the 1950s, the age of family motoring had arrived. Today's ferries have room for over 500 vehicles. Twice a day they bring Europe and the UK together over water which was once a defensive barrier. Henry VIII, the father of the modern navy, saw the national importance of Harwich Harbour and had defences built on Landguard Point. Later, in the 17th century, soldiers in a remodelled fort repelled a landing by the Dutch, the last time enemy troops set foot on English soil. When Britain went to war with Napoleon at the turn of the 19th century, the government built a magnificent redoubt to protect Harwich. And in the two world wars, the harbour was taken over by the military. Indeed, it was here in 1918 that the German North Sea submarine fleet surrendered. Today, the only forces are the natural ones of time and tide. And just as the Harwich Haven Authority fights for commerce, it also defends this unique and internationally important environment.
Environmental protection is a high priority for the authority. Stour and Orwell are both designated for large numbers of overwintering water birds, mainly waders. There's up to 50,000 of them in the Stour and at any one time over the winter. We do surveys from aircraft that look at levels of the mudflat, hydrographic surveys looking at water depths, and we do sediment surveys that look at both what the sediment is and what lives in it. Almost whatever moves around here or even doesn't move, we count it. The authority has an environmental management system that covers its own works, and it also is involved in regular training and oil spill recovery exercises.
We're constantly trying to improve our techniques for deploying oil pollution equipment, so we're coming over today to try our part of the exercise. The idea is that there would be an oil spill from the inside of the vessel. We're trying to deploy a boom in order to contain the oil between the ship and the quay and not allow it to move anywhere else. The oil that was trapped between this ship is now contained against the quay, so it's not going anywhere. So we've bought ourselves a bit of time now. We then move this vessel right up alongside the boom. The crane would lift the skimmer over the boom into the oil, and then the oil would be recovered into our oil recovery tanks. The vessel can carry about 74 tonnes in all. Well, the idea is to save as much time as possible in your response and to make it as safe as possible. So if we practice as often as we can, especially in ideal conditions, hopefully in not so ideal conditions when the pressure's on, everything should go smoothly.
For centuries, this 150 square mile pocket of water on the edge of England has played a key role in the nation's security and economic well-being. On these historic foundations, huge financial investment and new working practices have created an economic hub that has transformed the local economy and helped power UK trade. People like Peter Barton, who've known and worked here for years, can barely believe the journey that's been made.
I could never imagine in my time, starting in 1977, that I'd ever be travelling down nearly 3 kilometres of quay by the time I reached berth 8 or 9. It's just an incredible sight for me. The amount of cranes, the amount of work that's going on, and the amount of people that now work here.
This modern miracle has been realised thanks to over 150 years of progressive management. What the next century and a half has in store is unknown, but what is clear is that the vital role of maintaining and improving access is just as important today as it was in 1863. This world-leading harbour, in its internationally important natural setting, will safely navigate what the future throws at it, steered by the work of the Harwich Haven Authority.